All right, what is up, y'all? Back again with another video. We got UFC Paris coming up this weekend. Maval versus Baralho. Bit of a banger main event. I'm not gonna lie, for a while there, I was just not excited for that fight at all. I don't know really why. Like, I actually do kind of like Imavov, and Baralho I'm pretty neutral on. So it was just kind of, I don't know, it was just kind of the lack of aura, really. I was like, yeah, this fight exists, but with DDP Chimaev, it's like, does this fight really matter? And it's like RDR and Fluffy are way more exciting contenders right now. But I do think Imavov's a pretty solid fighter. Baralho's not too bad himself as well. I'll go over my pick for that fight later on. We've got the co-main event. Another fighting nerd, Mauricio Rufy, whatever, fighting Benoit Saint Denis, the man who got absolutely mauled the last time they went to Paris. We'll see if this time's any different. Got a bunch of prelims, got a bunch of other fights on the main card. I'm going to start off at the bottom, work my way to the top. That being said, let's start right off. We got Shauna Bannon versus Sam Hughes, the obligatory WMMA fight. I've been looking at the odds for this fight, and Sam Hughes is like, what is she, like a 2-1 favorite or something? Or like Shauna Bannon's like a 2-1 underdog? I don't know if I missed something. I mean, I know Shauna Bannon's not great. Like, I know she's not very good. But she's at least got a good-looking record. I mean, Sam Hughes is 10-6. Man, like, I'm not picking her to win a fight. She's 10-6. I'm not picking her to win a fight. Okay? Shauna Bannon's 7-1. Her only loss is in the UFC to Bruna Brazil, who's actually like a pretty solid opponent. I know Shauna doesn't have any like big wins to her name, but Sam Hughes doesn't even have a big loss to her name, let alone a big win. So I'm going by Shauna Bannon. I'm going by decision. She might finish her. Bannon has she has one of those like weird fluky ways, like who was it, Molly McCann. She's kind of like a Molly McCann, where you don't really like expect her to get finishes, but the women she's fighting are such cans that sometimes it kind of just comes to her. So yeah, I mean, I'm taking Shauna Bannon. I don't understand why she's an underdog. I wouldn't bet on this fight though, just because I don't bet on WMMA. There's too much bullshit that happens for me to ever want to consider that. But I mean, I just how? Just how? So I'm going with Shauna Bannon. That's all the time I'm going to spend on this one. Next up, Andreas Gustafsson versus Renat Fakhretdinov. I'm surprised this fight's so early in the night, but man, is it a good one. It's a very good, very entertaining stylistic matchup, I should say here. However, I do think it's a bad stylistic matchup for Renat, who I think is the much better striker in this situation. I think if this fight spends any amount of time at range, or even just like kind of in the distance of the pocket, like the furthest point of the pocket, I think Renat's going to land a lot of really good punches and catch Gustafsson right on the end of them. But Renat's not really a finisher. And Andreas seems pretty tough from what I can tell. And Andreas also is like one of the like most imposing fighters that I've ever seen. And I know it's only been one fight, but very few fighters come out with that kind of aggression and determination in their game plan and in their grappling. And more often than not, that's a very good sign of how they're going to handle their future fights and what you can expect from them. I mean, you look at guys, not saying that Andreas is as good as a Chimaev or a Khabib, but you kind of look at like guys like that who come out with a very aggressive, control-heavy style right out the gates, which is exactly what Andreas did against Chaos Williams. And I don't think that Chaos Williams is a particularly good fighter. That win isn't impressive because of the opponent, but because of the method. And I think that method is a really bad matchup for Renat, who we've seen struggle with people who put a pace on him, like Carlos Leal in that last fight, who he robbed. Alejandro Zaleski dos Santos, who I believe that fight was a draw, if I remember correctly. And, I mean, even Nicholas Dalby, who took him to a split decision, that Renat won, but, I mean, split decision against Dalby isn't exactly promising. So it seems like he has a lot of problems with pressure-heavy fighters that really put a pace on him. And that just seems like exactly what Gustafsson is. He's really just going to get up in his face and make it not matter that Renat's the better striker, because he's just going to throw his volume. He's going to throw heavy hands. He's going to be in close, in that clinch, just stuffing and like choking up his offense. I expect him to be holding him against the fence a lot and just breaking him down. You know, maybe a little bit boring at times, but I think anytime there's going to be a separation, it'll be exciting. And I see Gustafsson taking this to a decision. Probably 29-28, like Renat probably take that first round, landing some good damaging shots before Gustafsson is able to really get his game going. And then in the second and third, once Renat tires out a little bit, he's just going to start really hammering the takedowns. Really, not even takedowns, just really hammering the clinch injuries, the over-unders, and just controlling him really well. Next up on the card, we've got Brad Tavares versus Robert Brzczek, something like that. I'm just going to call him Robert or whatever for this fight. Now, I watched a little bit of tape on Brzczek, and he looks solid. You know, he's a slower guy, definitely more of a tankier build, kind of looking to pick his shots and land damaging ones against you. Doesn't seem to have a grappling heavy game, but can use a clinch if he needs to, or shoot a takedown to kind of mix it up. And he's had one fight in the UFC, and that was against Ihor Potieria, who I'm going to say it how it is. I don't rate Ihor Potieria at all. He's the guy, the unranked guy that can kind of go 50-50 with guys. But when I say with guys, I mean like new other low-level guys who get into the UFC, like a Robert Brzczek. Ihor isn't beating guys that make you go like, wow, Ihor's good. He's just beating guys that make you go, okay, he's solid. He's got some skills. He's got decent cardio. And the thing about that fight, more than anything else, is that Brzczek just kind of fell behind and at no point was able to swing the momentum back into his favor or really hit any big shots that got him around. And going against a guy like Brad Tavares, who's been in the UFC forever, really knows his way around the octagon, has won plenty of fights, is really just a seasoned veteran status at this point. I just see him being too smart for the game of Robert Brzczek. Tavares has legendary takedown defense, so grappling is pretty much off the table as an option, which turns this to a striking fest, which does give Robert a puncher's chance. I will say he could just absolutely cold Tavares in like the second round. I could totally picture that. But if I gotta pick someone, I'm picking Tavares. And I think he's just going to play this really smart, really safely, just circling on the outside, hitting Robert with mostly straights and leg kicks, defending the occasional takedown, maybe getting caught by some hooks here and there, having some moments where he kind of slips up, looks a little goofy, maybe looks like Robert could finish him, but overall recovering and in the end not actually taking that much damage in the exchanges. Next up, we're looking at Sam Patterson versus Trey Waters. This is a pretty cool fight in terms of like these guys both are young, have solid records. And this is kind of one of those fights where like whoever wins, I think, is one fight away from a ranking shot, maybe two, depending on the performances. But we're looking at kind of like this fight kind of seems like we're setting up for the next ranked contender. And Trey Waters has been looking good. I like his style. You know, he's very patient, has good shot selection, and has good size for this division as well. However, Sam Patterson matches him in that size pretty well. I would say Sam Patterson's definitely a bit lankier. I don't know if I really trust his strength as well in this matchup as I do Trey's. But he still has the height and the length. So it's not like Trey, who likes to hold the center, pick his shots, look for counter shots for the most part, and hit hard with those. I don't really think he's going to be able to play that long game quite as well, especially since Patterson's aggressiveness could definitely play into Waters' ability for those counters, and I could see him landing really hard shots and winning rounds off of that. But I don't really see him finishing Patterson, especially since, like, unless he gets, like, a one-punch out cold kind of deal, if he just knocks him to the ground, he's not going to want to follow Patterson to the ground because I really think Patterson will just out-grapple circles around him. And that kind of leads me into my point of, I think Patterson's well-roundedness and his ability to strike at range, strike long, and also secure finishes and takedowns from the grappling situations well is just going to be too much for Trey, to the point where Waters might be having, he might start out landing Patterson on the feet after they go tit for tat and it's pretty even for like a couple minutes. But as soon as that starts happening, Patterson can start to integrate the takedown, start integrating the clinch, and start working towards a finish. And given this streak that Patterson's been on, I mean, it's 4 fights. I believe they're all by finish with a mix of a mix of knockdowns, a mix of knockouts and submissions. I really think Sam's going to look to give a good performance here in the European countries. I know he's not French, but close enough to home soil. He might get that extra fire under him. And I see Patterson probably hitting him with a really gnarly shot like he hit Danny Barlow with, but I don't think it'll put Trey out. I think it'll just put him down enough that Patterson will then follow him to the ground and latch up a submission. That's what I'm seeing. Probably in the second round. I think the first round's going to be a lot of feeling out, a shot here, a shot there, both guys kind of circling on the outside, watching each other. And then in the second, things will pick up. Some hard shots will be landed. People will go down. Following that, we got Quay Fernandez is now fighting Harry Hardwick, who is going to debut on short notice. Heard a lot of good stuff about him from the MMA Guru. I, full honesty, have not seen footage of Harry Hardwick. I don't really know what he does super well. But I just never really like fighters that come in on short notice. I never like picking them. I don't think I ever will, unless it's somebody that I really, really trust. And Quay Fernandez, to his credit, he's picked up a couple solid, like, unranked wins. Guram was a solid name. And like I said, Harry Hardwick, I'm sure he looks great in Cage Warriors, and Cage Warriors has a lot of people who come from Cage Warriors to the UFC do really well. And I do think, from what I've heard, Harry Hardwick could do really well. But short notice just ain't it. A lot of these guys, they don't really have good performances on short notice, on debuts. And I can't deviate from that, the consistency of something like that. I'm just going to pick Quay Fernandez by decision. I do think Harry Hardwick is good enough to not be getting finished on his short notice debuts or anything like that, but I definitely question how good of a shape he's going to be in going into this. Following that, we're working on, we got Marcin Tybura and Ante Dalia. You can see I've got Dalia over here. He's got PFL shorts on. This guy has been a PFL warrior for the last few years. These guys actually fought each other a decade ago in 2015. I forget what the promotion was. It was something, I think it was M1. And it didn't last very long. It was like half a round. And to be fair, it was a pretty even half a round. And then Dalia had a leg injury, kind of like the Aspinall Blades one, which, unfortunately ended the fight. But right after that fight was when Marcin Tybura got signed to the UFC. And the rest is history. Tybura's been in the UFC ever since then. Dalia kind of bounced around a little bit, and then now he's been in the PFL for the last few years. And I think personally, like, that's already not a great sign in terms of like what promoters think of you, in terms of like the skills you've had and shown since then as well. You know, like Tybura has got signed to the UFC after that, and it's not like he's been undefeated since then. He started off with quite a few losses, but he's been good enough over all these years to still be in the UFC at 39, still be in the top 10. D'Elia, yes, he's 35. It's like a good amount of years younger than Tybura, to the point where I genuinely, really, really closely considered picking him, especially because it's heavyweight. But I've just seen too many of these guys come in, and I think, man, they look solid. They look good. You know, they might be able to do this. A lot of our heavyweights are blobs. But, I mean, we just saw something like this with Buchecha coming in against Budai. And Budai kind of just schooled him for 3 rounds, just casually. Which goes to show me that, like, as bad as a lot of the heavyweights we have in the UFC are, these are still the best heavyweights that MMA has to offer. And that's kind of just the fact of the matter. Tybura has been one of the greatest gatekeepers of all time. And 39's old, but heavyweights thrive on being old, you know? I mean, the light heavyweight had a 42-year-old champion a few years back. Stipe was just fighting for a belt at 40 the other year. I know that's kind of a separate example, but you get my point that I'm making. And, like, as much as I want to be different, I want to pick D'Elia, I really do think he has a solid chance of winning this. Everything that I see just tells me I got to go with Tybura, and I'm going to go with him to finish. Because I think, like, Tybura's age almost puts you into this idea of, like, oh, well, even if he is going to win, he's just going to out-technique the guy. He's just going to, you know, just outpoint him, use his veteran craftiness. But I really think Tybura's even a little bit better than that. I think we give him a little... I don't think we give him quite enough credit, you know? Like, I don't think he deserves a lot more than we give him, but a bit more. And I do think he can get a finish here. I expect a ground and pound, probably second, third round. He'll just get a takedown and end up in a good position and just kind of pound him out from there with hammer fists. Plain and simple. Next up, we got Umar Sy, Brenson Ribeiro. I don't even want to talk about this fight for that long because Umar Sy pissed me off in that last fight against Menefield. I thought he was an absolute lock, and then he just goes out there and proceeds to have one of the worst performances I've ever seen somebody have against a fighter as dog shit as Alonzo Menefield. So, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I am picking Umar Sy because Brenson Ribeiro is not good. But I want it to be known that I'm only doing this because I still, like, as bad as Umar Sy was in that last fight, he was promising before it. Brenson Ribeiro just isn't promising right now or recently. It was longer ago that Ribeiro was promising for anything. So I am very, very reluctantly taking Umar Sy in this matchup. If this wasn't in France, I think my hate would have been enough to make me officially go with Ribeiro. I was going with Ribeiro like up until I hit record basically, but right before I hit record, I was like I have to be honest with myself. Umar Sy is probably going to win this fight, but I don't expect it to be impressive. I think he is going to be scared after how that last fight went against Menefield. And I know that sounds kind of weird because, like, the problem in that Menefield fight was that he was too inactive. So fear would cause him to be even less inactive and make him lose again. But when I say that, I think it's going to cause him to be scared of being too inactive. And he's going to act at certain times when he shouldn't act and kind of lose some of that fight IQ he had momentarily and put himself into slightly worse situations, which will allow Ribeiro to have some success and make the fight a little closer than it even should be. Next up, we got William Gomes versus Robert Uchala. I did not watch tape on Robert Uchala, and I don't really care for William Gomes. Like, I'm sorry. William Gomes is so fucking boring too. I don't fucking care. Robert Uchala. I'll watch him when he makes his debut. Yeah, I'm gonna pick Uchala by decision. Fuck it. Forgot I picked Ruchala. I thought I went with safe with Gomes, but I'm realizing that I picked the red corner for like, I think I realized I went with the red corner for every single other one. So I was like, fuck it. You know what? Gomes isn't that interesting to me, and Ruchala, maybe. He's young. KSW is not a bad organization, so we'll see. I'm going out on the limb for this one. I'm gonna pick Ruchala. We'll see. All right, main card. We got Patricio Pitbull going against Losine Keita, I think is how you say it. Another guy making a debut. I believe he's German. There's a couple German guys on this card, which is interesting to me. Now, when I look at this matchup, the thing that absolutely stands out the most to me is the ages. Losine Keita is 11 years younger. Now, and if you look at the stats of fighters, like fights where the age gap has been like 8 years or more, and especially a decade or more, the younger fighter has like an 88% win rate in situations like that. Now, I understand Pitbull's solid. He's not like bad, even at his older age. You know, he got that win over Dan Ige, who's a solid gatekeeper, and he almost got Yair in that armbar. And honestly, like, as much as we all hate on Yair, and I don't really care for Yair anymore, he is a good striker. And if you're going to stand on the feet with him like Pitbull did for 90% of that fight, you're going to have a tough time. That was more of an IQ thing by Pitbull, in my opinion, as to why he lost that fight. Because I feel like if he had went much heavier on the grappling and the takedowns, he could have won that fight. But if you're not going to go that way against a guy like Yair, where that weakness is so obvious, then I just don't trust you to be like any smarter going into this fight. And stylistically, the matchup is a lot more favorable for him. Keita's more of a, boxer type, power puncher, definitely plays more into Pitbull's hand. But when we look at a situation like that in circumstances, Pitbull's slow, Keita's fast. And he's old. I mean, like I said, I'm not going against a stat like that. That's the kind of stat and difference where I almost start to ignore the rest of the stat lines, I guess I should say. I was looking for another word, but stat lines that go into the fight and the records, and I just start to think like Keita's, if he's good enough to be double champ in another one of these organizations and get signed to the UFC, he's got a solid record. I just think he's going to be too fast and too powerful for Pitbull. I don't think Patricio is meant to do really anything great in the UFC. The biggest thing is that, like, visually and mentally, it's kind of hard for me to imagine Keita ranked but that would be the truth, is that he would be ranked if he beats Pitbull. But if I just ignore that and just stop and don't think of it in terms of like, do I think Keita's a ranked fighter or not, and just look at the one-on-one matchup, I just don't go with the older fighter like that, especially in a division like featherweight where age can matter so much. I'm seeing just like a quick first round, early second round knockout for Losine Keita. I can't imagine Pitbull sustaining the damage at this point in his career going against a guy who's such a young gun. Next up, we've got Reese McKee going against another debuting guy. There's a lot of guys. I don't know if I said it already, but there's a lot of guys making their debut on this card. And his name is Axel Sola. Axel Sola. Kind of a cool name. And I believe that belt looks like it says Aries, maybe. Again, I couldn't really be bothered to watch any footage on Axel Sola. I just kind of looked over at their resumes. Reese McKee, like, again, it's just another thing where, like, I don't like a guy that goes to the UFC, loses, and then fights in a smaller promotion and gets some wins, and then comes back and then loses or wins against like equally mediocre competition, you don't impress me. And I just don't really like, I can't think of a reason to pick Reese McKee other than the fact that he's already in the UFC and the idea of like, oh, he's a UFC fighter. But when I look at Axel Sola, like, he's younger, he's got similar physicality stats, and he's got a 10-0 record. You know, I mean, these are simple things. He's French. They're fighting in France. If I recall, I think this fight was added kind of late too. So Reese McKee is making kind of late travel notice plans for this fight. Axel Sola's already there. He's already with his team, with his camp. He doesn't have to move anything. So I'm picking him by a decision. I feel like he could probably get a knockout against a guy like Reese McKee, who's so fucking skinny and thin, and loses to guys like Alex Morono. But again, I don't know enough about Alex Sola, so I'm just gonna play it safe, pick a decision. I'm not going with Reese McKee. I do kind of like McKee though, so I won't be upset if he loses. Moving on, we got Balaji Oki versus Mason Jones. Now this is a good fight. This one's kind of hits the same itch as the Sam Patterson Trey Waters matchup, where it's two guys that are putting together some solid streaks, on the come up, pretty new to the organization. I think Mason Jones is actually not that new to the organization, which is part of the reason why I will be picking Balaji Oki by decision. I think Mason Jones, he'll have very good volume, and his well-roundedness is nice. I think he will win clinch exchanges and maybe land a takedown here and there that will win him moments. But generally, I expect the fight to be a stand-up fight. And I really like, in this matchup, given the size similarities and the comparisons, I like Oki's style here of being more patient and having some really nice power in his shots. I actually expect Mason to land a lot in this matchup. I do think he will out-volume Oki, but I expect Oki's shots to just have more visible damage on Mason and to have that kind of just add up over the rounds. Like Mason probably running away with the first based off some clinching and some good volume. But then as the second and third go on, Oki's power is going to start hurting his nose. He might bust up the eye a little bit. You're going to start seeing Jones wear it. And even though I think Mason will still be in that fight, doing well, being competitive, those visuals are just going to go against him. And Balaji will walk away with like a 29-28. Moving along, we got Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig. Paul Craig is old and was never super good to begin with. He just had a really good explosive ability to snatch you into a triangle, really was it. If you kind of let your guard down after dominating him for most of the fight. But like I said, at this point, he's too old. I don't think he's durable enough to outlast you in a fight like that or have the cardio to do it really either. And I'm not going to overthink it. There's a lot of fights on this card. I'm not going to overthink. I'm taking Bukauskas first round knockout. Maybe second or third if Paul is really still tough, but I can't. He's not going to have anything for him on the feet. And Bukauskas isn't going to entertain the grappling if he's smart. All the time I'm going to spend on talking about this one because I want to move on. Mauricio Ruffy versus Benoit Saint Denis. Now, if you guys have seen any of my older videos, which I understand you probably haven't, you'd know that I've been high on Benoit for a while. Or at least I was high on Benoit when he was first kind of coming up and around. And I was really high on him all the way up until the Poirier fight. As soon as the Poirier fight got announced, I knew it was too much too soon. I couldn't believe he was the favorite. And that fight proved me right. I actually thought BSD would do a lot better against Moicano than he did. But kind of after seeing that and seeing him have to go to the second round with a short notice can like Kyle Prepelic, it just kind of has removed a lot of my confidence in BSD's abilities. Because even in that Prepelec fight, even though he didn't really take a lot of damage or get into a lot of danger at all, Prepelec was landing the shots. And you can see his defense in that fight. His striking defense has just not really improved how you'd want it to. He's still slow. He's not moving his head as much as you'd want him to. And if he's not getting the takedown on you, what is he doing? You know? I mean, it kind of just feels like he fumbles around on the feet a little until he gets that takedown. And don't get me wrong, I still like BSD. I'm not trying to say anything too much. I really do think, and I do think he has a good shot in this fight as well. I say all of that to show, kind of to make my point for my pick. But this is a competitive matchup because we've never really seen Ruffy go against a guy of BSD's level, period. Like, BSD has shown he is better than a lot of these unranked guys. I would still pick him to beat a lot of these guys, you know? I mean, he ran through Favola. He ran through Moises. He ran through one of the Bone Fiends. I mean, there was really good reason why we were high on BSD at the time. But he has shown that this higher level competition can really, really exploit his weaknesses to a devastating extent in terms of the Poirier knockout and the Moicano domination. And a guy like Ruffy, I mean, do we know how good his grappling game is? Not really, right? Like I said, we haven't really seen him go against a grappler like BSD who has good wrestling, has finishing ability, good ground and pound, will go for submissions. It's a serious threat. But stylistically, the quickness of the movement of Ruffy and his footwork should just be too much for slow, plotty BSD, who doesn't shoot the best of takedowns. Even on the ones that he would land, they're not the greatest. I just expect Ruffy to be really fast. And I think Ruffy has really good eyes too, is something that I feel like. So he's going to be able to react really well to anything that BSD does. So the second he sees the hips move, the arms go low, anything like that, he's sprawling, he's backing up, he's throwing a knee maybe. I don't think he throws knees really, but maybe he might this fight. He's doing something, and he's getting out of the way. He's keeping his distance. He's popping him with straight jabs. He's popping him with kicks from the distance. And just generally not letting BSD get close, touching him up really well to the face. We've seen BSD does not wear damage the best, and I don't know if I expect Ruffy to... I don't expect Ruffy to brutalize him the way that Moicano did, because that was a lot from Moicano with ground and pound and elbows. But, I mean, a few solid uppercuts or right hands from Ruffy, I feel like we could start seeing some of those old cuts get reopened. You know, that scar tissue is not going to help BSD in this fight. The visuals will be bad. And, again, and speaking of visuals, I mean, Ruffy's whole style kind of makes him look really good. You know, that old school McGregor style. It's just really flashy, a lot of movements, a lot of spinning. You know, even when it's kind of neutral situations, he looks like he's styling on you. And that's going to be, even though they're in France and BSD is the French guy, those are just going to be really good visuals that it's going to be hard to fight against. Especially if you're a slow, plotty guy like BSD, you're not really going to look good until you're having success. Whereas Ruffy will have like the kind of style where even when he's just slipping shots, it's going to look like he's schooling him. And I think BSD is tough enough to survive here. I don't think Ruffy is going to land like an insane spinning kick on him like he did against Green. And I don't think he's going to be able to control him on the ground like Moicano did either. So I do see Ruffy winning this by a decision. We've already seen him go 3 rounds against guys who are tough and durable in the James Lontop fight. I know Lontop's not very good, but he came in heavy for that fight, which I think is important because guys who come in heavy usually have a lot of success grappling against their opponent. Usually it's very hard to knock them out. They're very durable. And we saw a lot of that same stuff in that fight. Lontop was durable, hard to knock out, and Ruffy was still able to just be quick, move out of the way, land his shots. And again, I mean, like, we're talking like the no look uppercut and stuff. Like, that kind of stuff just looks insane. If one guy lands a no look uppercut and the other guy just lands a normal uppercut, the no look guy is probably like getting scored more favorably off of that 9 times out of 10. Just because it's flashier, it's more stylistic. It looks like, oh my God, he doesn't even need to look at the guy and he's still landing right on his chin. That's crazy. So that's what I'm expecting in this fight. I just think BSD is going to be too slow. His head movement's not there. Ruffy's footwork will be too good. He'll be sliding out of the way, popping in with shots from a distance. He won't be throwing anything too heavy because of the fear of the takedown, but that activity is just going to be too much for BSD to try and catch up to, and that old scar tissue could really come back to bite him in the ass here. And now, finally, the main event. We have Hometown Plot Armor versus Fighting Nerds Plot Armor. And that is a joke, but I'm also dead fucking serious. Those two factors have made this fight pretty tricky for me to come to like a solid conclusion on, at least for a while. Right now, the pick I have, I'm set on this pick. I'm confident in this pick after watching the footage that I've watched and some of the research I've done. The biggest factor in picking this fight for me was comparing how they both performed against Jared Cannonier, because that's the biggest like common opponent they have. Now, Imavov fought Cannonier first, and it was, I would argue that, no, I wouldn't argue it. Imavov had a better performance against Cannonier. I think that's pretty clear cut and dry. You just look at the pictures alone of how they both looked after their fights. I mean, Kaio's busted up. He's bleeding from his right eye. I mean, he looks like he's been in a war. Imavov, after the fight, barely even really looked like he was in a fight. And I know that stoppage was like a dog shit stoppage, but he did legitimately rock Cannonier. He did legitimately rock him. And I know that Baralho also got like a really bad rocking and knockdown against Cannonier. I mean, that highlight's insane. Like, I legitimately had to Google what the result of that fight was, like, a good handful of times while I was making my predictions for this, because I legitimately kept forgetting whether he finished him in that round or not. But now that I remember that Baralho still ended up going to decision after hurting Cannonier like that, it really doesn't paint like a good picture for me in terms of like how his striking is going to hold up against Imavov here. Because like, if you can't put out Cannonier after landing a 1-2 that makes someone fall over like that, I mean, I really don't expect you to be able to put down Imavov the same way. Because he had to wear down Cannonier bad before he got to that point. And the shot was more of just like a really quick 1-2. Seemed to almost catch Cannonier off guard more than anything else. And Imavov, I think, will just have a better chin, be more durable. And I don't even think, I think between those two factors, by the time they get to a 4th or a 5th round, if that happens, really, like, Imavov won't be in a situation where that would or could happen to him. I think he'd be in a situation where he's pretty safe from getting rocked or wobbled if it goes into the later rounds. Whereas Baralho, I don't trust the same way. Like I said, he wore the damage worse. So there's already a precedence for Imavov to just kind of win off of visuals that way, especially in his hometown. And I know those shots are going to hurt. I mean, Imavov, I definitely think hits harder than Baralho. I mean, we've not really seen Baralho fight or win like a power puncher does in any of his fights. He's got really good speed. I will give him that. He's very fast. And he's got good volume, good activity, good cardio. But Imavov has solid cardio as well. I do think Braulio has him beat out there. And that could be a problem, like I said, going into the later rounds, especially with Braulio being the naturally faster guy. You know, as you get tired and the guy's already faster than you, that can really start to add up quick. But I see the sting from Imavov's punches mattering a lot, especially when it'll cause the kind of damage that Cannonier could cause. I see him being able to do a lot of that. And Imavov's great at counter-striking. You saw in that first round against Izzy and that first round against Cannonier, Imavov was a lot slower. He didn't really throw a lot of punches in those rounds. But as it started to reach the end of the first and you start working into the second, Imavov picks up that activity a lot. And what I see is he's making reads on what opponents like to throw, how they react to things that he throws, and building what kind of counter shots he wants to do off of that. Which is a perfect kind of style to have against a guy who's more volume heavy in a guy like Braulio. And I think the speed of Braulio might actually go against him a bit because he's going to start getting a little... He'll throw 1-2s, 2-3s, and little punch combos like that. And he'll throw them really quick because he's going to think like, oh, I got to boom, boom, right before Imavov can react. Boom, boom, before he can react. And he's going to land a lot of those. And I do think Kyle will win the first round because of it. But come the second round and the third round, Imavov will have his reads and he will be stinging Kyle hard in the face with his counter shots. And he's not going to just land one counter shot. He's going to land one, follow up with another, and maybe hit like an uppercut or a hook to end it off. Imavov's got good kicks too. Braulio doesn't really have a kicking game there. And I see Nasruddin being pretty free to throw kicks because Braulio doesn't actually grapple that much. Like, as much as I do think, like, okay, visually and, like, spiritually, I guess, I feel like Braulio should have a grappling advantage here. But given his real lack of using it in his fights and winning with it, like a history of winning with it, I don't really expect him to go for it in this fight. And even if he does, I don't think it's better than Imavov's grappling. Like, I really think these guys are completely even in the grappling. I can see Braulio taking Imavov down, but I can't see him holding him there. I see Imavov just getting right back up. And I also see Imavov, you know, instigating clinch situations with Kaio and landing a few good shots here and there, maybe something on the break, but Kaio will eventually, you know, slip out of it, turn around, and then maybe land a few quick ones against Nasruddin against the cage. But generally, any kind of grappling is just going to kind of cancel out and end up becoming an even exchange, which leaves the fate of this fight in the hands of the striking, where I think Imavov is just better than Kaio. Just straight up. I just think he's better than him there. He's done it against better competition, too. I mean, Imavov's resume is kind of a sleeper. Guys like Buckley. I mean, that Izzy fight. I mean, you cannot convince me Izzy was washed in that fight. He looked fantastic in that fight before the knockout. And even before that, he was winning a lot of the DDP fight before he got subbed. So I think Nasruddin's win over Adesanya is very legit. Very telling of his striking ability. I mean, it plays right into the whole counter-striking argument that I was playing off. He had a better performance against a common opponent in Cannonier. He's fought more diverse styles in terms of guys like... I mean, he's fought another power puncher in Buckley. He's fought a good solid grappler in Brendan Allen. And I know that Brendan Allen fight was definitely like kind of a questionable performance from Imavov, especially given how Allen has progressed since. But I feel that every fight that he's had since the Brendan fight is also enough proof to kind of show that, like, hey, he's improved and there was kind of just, everyone kind of has like a random tough fight every now and again. Like if you look through a lot of these guys' resumes, like they have a really tough fight against a guy that just kind of doesn't make sense when you look at it initially. Kind of like the Roofy Lawn Top one. That one makes a little more sense because Lawn Top came in heavy, but you understand what I mean. And yeah, so to circle back to this fight, based off everything that I said, the grappling being basically completely neutral, leaving it to a striking exchange where Braulio will have more volume, but that will also set up more opportunities for Imavov to counter, who has good power, really good shot selection, good durability, more so than Braulio from what I can tell. You see all of this, and it leads me to think I'm taking Imavov by a 3rd round knockout. I think he's going to finish Braulio. I think he's going to have a big moment in Paris. I think, crowd's going to go wild. He's going to call out Chimaev. He's going to say, screw RDR and Fluffy. Or he might not say that, but he's just going to call out Chimaev. He's going to say he can knock him out, all this, all that. We're all going to know that's not true, but Nasruddin will have his moment, and Fighting Nerds plot armor will be officially, kind of, taken off the table. And now it's just like, okay, Prates has lost once, Braulio's lost once. Now it's just be good, Because I do think the Fighting Nerds overall are very good. Braulio does have a solid chance to win this fight. But I just see I think Braulio's best bet to win is a decision. And the longer this fight goes on for, the more opportunities Nasruddin has to land the counter shot, to drop Braulio bad, follow up with some TKO shots on the ground. And especially if this ends up being a TKO, couldn't you see in France, he knocks down Braulio with a hard counter shot, lands 2-3 really good follow-up strikes on the ground, and the ref just waves it off. Don't you see that being a possibility here? I know that's kind of a bullshit, cop-out, way to get my pick right, but that's just what I see happening, regardless of whether it's waved off early or not. I imagine Imavov getting an emphatic KO here. It'll be a huge deal because Braulio's a Fighting Nerd. He was the first Fighting Nerd to be signed. But I also think he's the worst Fighting Nerd. And that's not to say he's bad. The Fighting Nerds are good. But, I see a future champion in John Silva. Prates is about to fight for a top 5 spot after getting an insane knockout and going, very competitively with Ian Gary. Ruffy's still a bit more questionable. We'll kind of see how he goes. Because as much as I'd like to see, be on the Ruffy hype train, his kind of style is just very much a double-edged sword. But Braulio's the only one that I feel like we've seen enough of to confidently say that he's good, but he's not that good. And that's really where I'm at. Imavov, 3rd round knockout. That's my official pick. What do you guys think? What do you think of my picks? How do you think this main event's going to go? How do you think the co-main event's going to go? Call me smart. Call me stupid. Just leave a comment. Comment, subscribe. I said it 3 times. Whatever. I don't care. I'm doing the outro. Thank you guys for watching. And let's enjoy the fights. Stay violent.